Summary of the Birds by Daphne Du Maurier. On December 3rd, the season changes quickly from fall to winter in a quiet seaside town. Nat Hawken, a disabled war veteran who works on a farm, notices that there seem to be more birds than normal flying around and making noise over the sea. Nat tells Mr. Trigg about the birds when he is done with his work for the day. Mr. Trigg says that the birds' behavior must be caused by the weather, and he says that this winter will be hard. Nat wakes up that night to a steady tapping on his window. When he opened it, 6 birds flew around his face. Nat throws them away with his arms, but then he hears his kids crying from their room. He runs to their room, where he finds the window open and a lot of birds attacking. Nat tells the kids to leave the room, then wraps himself in a blanket and fights with the birds until dawn. When the sun comes up, 50 dead birds are on the floor. The next morning, Nat tells his wife that the birds' behavior is because of the sudden cold snap and the east wind. After putting his daughter Jill on the school bus, he goes to the farm to see how the Triggs are doing. Nat tells Mrs. Trigg about his fight with the birds the night before, but she says it was just the weather and doesn't believe him. Jim, a cowhand, feels the same way. Nat goes back home to get the dead birds, but the ground is frozen solid, so he can't bury them. When he gets the bodies to the beach, he sees thousands of birds flying over the water. Back at his cottage, Nat and his wife hear on the radio that the killings are going on all over the country. Nat continues to put up boards over the windows and fill the chimney bases. A few hours later, another report says that a huge group of birds has stopped everything in London. Nat doesn't like how lighthearted the announcer is, and he thinks that many people won't take the threats seriously. Nat walks part of the way to the beach, but when he gets there, the tide has changed and the gulls are flying around like they're about to attack. He runs to the bus stop to get Jill because he is scared. As the birds start to flock, Nat and Jill run to the farm, where Nat asks Mr. Trigg to finish driving Jill home. Mr. Trigg does this, but he makes fun of Nat's fear by saying that boarding up his house is a waste of time. As Nat runs home, a group of birds start diving at him. He gets inside just seconds before a gannet would have hit him on the head and broken it. The Hawken family huddles together in their house as hundreds of birds hit the windows and roof with their wings. Nat tries to keep his family from thinking about how dangerous their situation is by singing and whistling as he makes the house safer. That night, a speaker on the radio calls for a state of national emergency and tells people to stay inside. After dinner, the family hears planes and gunshots coming from the direction of the sea. Nat's wife and kids are happy about the idea of military help, but Nat knows that the sounds of planes crashing into the water are what he hears next. He feels sad inside about the waste of life and effort. When the bird attacks stop, Nat figures out that they have something to do with the high tide. He figures he has 6 hours until the next attack, so he goes outside and, in the cold and dark, strengthens the cottage windows by putting the bodies of dead birds into cracks in the glass. After going back to bed, he realizes he forgot to light a fire to keep the birds out of the chimney. He quickly relights the fire, burning the birds who were already trying to get down. He then takes a drag on one of his last 2 cigarettes. The birds start tapping again, and Nat realizes that some of them have broken into the upstairs beds. He makes the door hard to open. The family is very excited to hear the news at 7 a.m., but when Nat's wife turns on the radio, all they hear is silence. Nat is curious about how long the radio battery will last. When the fighting stops for a while, Nat and his family drive to the Triggs farm to get food and other supplies they need. There, Nat finds that the birds have killed everyone in the Trigg house. Nat doesn't have time to mourn, so he makes 3 trips to get what he can and puts everything into his cottage just before the tide turns. Even on foreign stations, the radio keeps playing nothing but fuzz. This makes Nat think that the attacks are happening all over Europe. Hawks pound on the door as Nat thinks about how to organize the new goods and what else he needs to do to make the cottage stronger. Nat tells his wife that he will smoke his last cigarette as the wood starts to split and tear. He throws the empty package into the fire.
About the author. The actors Sir Gerald du Maurier and Muriel Beaumont gave birth to Daphne Du Maurier in London, England.
Her family supported her artistic goals from a young age. Her father introduced her to different theater players, and her great-uncle, who was a journalist and editor, put her early writing in a magazine he ran called Bystander. In 1931, The Loving Spirit, Du Maurier's first book, came out. The book caught the notice of Lieutenant General Frederick Browning, a British airborne officer. In 1932, Du Maurier married Browning. The couple had 3 children and spent most of their lives together in Cornwall, which is where many of Du Maurier's books are set. After she got married and became Lady Browning, Du Maurier kept writing under her given name. Rebecca, her most famous book, was written when Du Maurier was 31 years old. The book was an instant hit and went on to win the 1938 National Book Award. This made Du Maurier even more well-known as a master of Gothic romance and horror. Alfred Hitchcock made an Oscar-winning movie out of Du Maurier's book Rebecca in 1940. He also made films out of Jamaica Inn and The Birds. Nicholas Regg adapted her short story Don't Look Now into what is considered a classic and important piece of British horror. Du Maurier wrote a lot of novels and short stories, as well as 3 plays and a number of non-fiction books, including a history of her father. She was made a Dame of the British Empire in 1969 for her services to art. She was 81 when she died in Cornwall.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.